Welcome to race coverage here of the Cal Club region of the SCCA's Divisional races from Buttonwillow Raceway Park. Our racing today is brought to you by
California in third place on the grid. Running lower, number 76 from Chino Hills, California. In front of him, starting in second, number 6, Tom Van Wee. The Mazda Formula from Fallbrook, California, the only entry in the FA class. And then starting at the top of the grid in pole position, number 12, Robert Kazin in a 2007 West WR07 from Fallbrook, California.
And that is our starting lineup. We're getting ready for our first race of the day. Starting a little earlier than we normally do out here this weekend because of the heat. Last time I checked, it was like 84 degrees outside, but it was 107. It was 107.
It was
yesterday in the heat of the day, and we don't like racing in those temperatures, so we start early. So only 4 cars in this particular race, so and I believe it's one Formula Atlantic and a couple of P2 cars, right?
Yeah, 3 P2s and the one Formula Atlantic. Interesting to note, Robert Kazin actually set a really good time in qualifying at 147.5, which is faster than Tom Van Wee's qualifying in that Formula Atlantic of the 151. But I believe, and I'm not entirely sure what the circumstances were, but Robert Kazin is starting at the back of the pack, so not necessarily sure exactly what happened right there, but we should expect to see Tom Van Wee rip it up again. He was really tearing around the track yesterday when he was out here. I assume we're going to see more of the same.
We probably will see more of the same. You can see them on their pace lap out in the distance there. That's coming through the grapevine. One camera today. We're still working on testing our stream, so you'll get the regular play-by-play coverage. But we're only going to have one camera today, and we will be growing the stream to multiple cameras before our official launch in January. But we're getting a good chance to see everything and how it's all working as far as the stream goes here from Buttonwillow. So excited about that, and that's what we got going on today.
Yeah, it'll be a good day of racing. We've got 4 groups here racing today, so 4 separate races across a variety of classes. If you are following along, you are curious what we are racing on, it is obviously Buttonwillow Raceway. It is the number 25 configuration, and it is counterclockwise. You can find that information online. Right now, the pace car is in, and here come our racers around to the straight.
And as you can see them rounding on the front straight here, and the green flag is out. We are racing. You see the Formula Atlanta car take the early lead here. That is Tom Van Wee. And that is kind of how things played out yesterday as well.
Yeah, we did see some pretty aggressive driving, honestly, for Tom Van Wee, despite the fact, he's the only Formula Atlantic out there. He doesn't necessarily need to race against these guys per se. I think he was very much keen on setting a sharp time. He also made an interesting note right there coming across the starting line. Robert Kazin, who had set pole position for the day, sped past Andy Chan and was moving right in behind on Andy or Rene Lore right there. So trying to put a little bit of pressure on him as well early on. Those P2s are technically racing against each other. Obviously, they all finish on the podium, but certainly a matter of where on the podium, and pride points count for sure in that setup.
Absolutely. 25-minute races today, so it doesn't matter how many laps you get in. When the 25-minute mark comes, they will throw the checkered flag, and whoever comes across first will win this race. I will say with this particular group, they'll get a lot more laps in 25 minutes than some of our other groups, because that Formula Atlantic car that's out front, that is the fastest race car here this weekend if it's running properly.
Well, it's interesting. The Formula Atlantic car was out in front when they came across the start line, went down into the turns that we can't necessarily see through the S's coming out of Phil Hill. Into the Riverside turn, though, and then down through the dog leg is actually Robert Kazin, who took over that leading spot. So the P2 pushing out in front of Tom Van Wee in the Formula Atlantic, and that's an interesting development. And I don't think Tom Van Wee is going to want to stay quite in that spot either. I took himself very seriously yesterday, and I assume something similar will happen. You see now actually coming into the straight, it will be Robert Kazin who is well in the lead. And taking a look at it, actually, Robert Kazin setting a blistering time there on that first lap, 154 on the drum. And then below him, Tom Van Wee at 156.9, so a 2.5 second gap in between the two of them. And this is actually a pretty significant change from how things were when they raced yesterday. Tom Van Wee was never, ever, ever, ever anywhere close to being chased by any of these guys, and now he's battling in second place.
There you go. And that's good, though, because, it gives him a little bit of a challenge.
It does.
And it gives us something to talk about.
It certainly does. It's quite impressive, actually, from Robert Kazin. I don't know where he's dug that out of, all things considered, but hey, go for it.
It's all about us, right? We want to have stuff to talk about. So it's always good for that to happen. So.
Wow, and coming down through the dogleg again, it looks like Robert Kazin has opened that gap even more. That Formula Atlantic car just kind of hanging back now. I think that 2.5 second gap might have opened up maybe almost to 3 seconds. You'll get a good look at them coming over on the camera just now, moving in through the grapevine. And it does indeed look as though Robert Kazin is still comfortably ahead. There's not really been a good opportunity for Tom Van Wee to catch up just yet. Now, usually I should say we say that, and they go down into the dips that you and I can't see here, Brian, which is the offer. From what I'm hearing over the radio, that the Formula Atlantic put on a burst of speed right there. Tom Van Wee actually managed to slip around Robert Kazin down towards turn number 3, which was impressive because he was 2.2 seconds behind when they crossed the finish line. So he must have really let it rip down there heading into the S's to make that jump, and he's really pushed ahead. You'll be able to see that gap difference on the screen if you're watching via YouTube, but it's almost as if the two cars switch colors. That's how big the gap is.
Exactly.
It's interesting to note yesterday, towards the end of the race, Tom Van Wee in that yellow number 6 was looking a little sloppy. A lot of kicked up dust, a lot of wide, kind of awkward turns. Didn't quite know whether that was a product of the heat or what. But noting the turn that was just made up into the grapevine right there, again, Tom Van Wee kicking up some dust. He'll come across the straight right now, right past us here in the tower. Unfortunately, it does sound like at least one of the cars out there on the track might be having a little bit of mechanical trouble. It could be, I think, 1, 2, 3 is losing a little bit of speed. We'll get, better confirmation of that, and hopefully they won't have to go behind the wall.
Yeah, that 1, 2, 3 car is Andy Chan. That is a P2 car. And P2 stands for Prototype 2. For those of you who don't know exactly what our classing schedule is, if you can hand me that piece of paper there, that P2 car that's a Radical, and that's a real popular car in Europe, a very highly raced car in this type of racing in Europe, what we call club racing. So, and it's got some popularity here as well, but so that's in our class we call Prototype 2. There's also a Prototype 1 class, which has a lot of cars that used to run in IMSA and the World Toyota Challenge and a couple of other things. We don't have any of those here with us this weekend, so.
Well, I haven't quite heard the chatter about it either, but it does look like Robert Kazin, his car is going slower and slower here, just coming down through the dog leg, and that gap that Tom Van Wee has pulled open has just ripped wide apart right there. And I'm not sure what happened because Robert Kazin was setting two very kind of hot laps really fast around the track, and then all of a sudden, he can't seem to match that time anymore. So one can't help but wonder if there maybe is a little bit of a mechanical error contributing to that slower speed. I mean, it is very hot out there. We said at the start, it's about 85 right now up here in the tower. I don't even want to know what it is actually out on the track. I can see, you can see from the tower the heat waves, the little like wobbly lines out there. So it's hot. And that will impact. We had at least one engine kind of run into an overheat situation yesterday, and it's already ticking up towards 86. The high today, by the way, if you're interested, is going to be 108 out here in Buttonwillow. Thankfully, Brian, like you said, we're starting early, so we shouldn't catch the worst of that. We hope, but you got to feel a little bit bad for our final group of the day, the Spec Ford racers who are going to be out there when it's almost at its hottest.
Absolutely, and we keep doing this out there for that earlier because of that heat, and we'll do it again today. So.
About 4 laps in now for these cars, 8 minutes into the race. The fastest time of record in the group right now is a 153.573. That'll be from Tom Van Wee. You saw Rene Lauer just come across the finish line here just now at a 208.545. So that gives you a little bit of an idea at how fast Tom Van Wee is going in comparison to the rest of the field. That number 12 car of Robert Kazin is still battling out there, but has completely dropped in terms of speed. So I'm not sure if the engine was kind of redlining or overheating or what have you, but whatever it is, he's not much of a race anymore for him, unfortunately. More of an enjoyable Sunday drive, but there are definitely worse ways to spend your time. Coming across the line now, Andy Chan, let's take a look at his time on that last lap, 219.612, so quite a significant gap opening up here between Tom Van Wee and the last car in this group of 4. Speaking of, Tom Van Wee across the line didn't quite match his time, actually dropped about a second there off that lap. Yeah, it looks a bit almost. It looked almost like the one that Robert Kazin drives. Actually, white with a number 12 plus there on the side, and that'll be what you see. Rene Lauer has a rather dashing black and orange color scheme, getting into the Halloween theme early on. Randy Chan running that black and red, and then Tom Van Wee in a very distinctive bright yellow, makes him very noticeable. In fact, Tom Van Wee now about to lap the aforementioned Andy Chan. It will go sailing right by, no problems at all, coming up into the grapevine. Meanwhile, across the line again, number 76, Rene Lauer, 2 minutes 10 seconds on that lap, almost on the dot, 0.2 or 0.025 over. And Robert Kazin continuing to track along, has dropped just about 6 seconds off his best lap time, and More than 7 seconds off of what he was able to do in qualifying, possibly even more. As I said earlier, this is our first race of the day. 4 cars in this one. Coming up next, it will be our Spec Miata group. Definitely recommend you stay around for that. Estimated green flag start time for that race will, I believe, be 10:20. So that promises to be an exciting one, to be sure. A big group today. 12 Spec Miatas in the field. I saw them last night. A gaggle of Mazda Miata drivers. And then you'll see on our screen all our groups racing today. Group 4 got a little bit bigger as well. 5 cars in today, and that's a interesting conglomeration there, Brian. That'll be fun to watch. And of course, our Spec Racer Fords will be our last group racing. But a number of interesting groups. Definitely stick around for the Miatas and the Spec Racers, if nothing else.
Yeah, we've got a lot of folks. If you look at that 11:05 race, we do not have cars from every one of those classes, but when we put out the schedule, those are all the classes that could be in that group. I remember yesterday we had 6 cars from 6 different classes, so
yeah, we did.
It was. I'm sure it will be something similar to that today, but. Getting back to our race action here, we are at the halfway point. I think that is where we traditionally do the halfway mid-race recap. Why don't you give us that right now, Tristan?
Yeah, let's give you a grid. Was on lap number 7 right there. So he's having himself a good time, and he's looking cleaner than he did yesterday. That's to be sure, though. Again, the heat does tend to get to them, I think, a little bit as the race goes on. It's so easy, to think, how could it be that hot when you're actually in the car? But, I mean, when you think about it, you've got the suit, you've got the hood, you got everything all going on, the helmet. No air conditioning in these racers either, obviously. So it is a warm experience, to say the least, when you're out there in the engine. Not to mention you sit on the grid for about maybe 3 to 5 minutes before you actually go out, just sort of soaking in the heat of the engine and the heat of the sun. So
First time I was, not first time, but I saw, drivers with someone holding the umbrella over the car on the grid.
Yep.
And I thought, man, how pretentious do you have to be to have someone hold the dang umbrella? And then I sat in the race car on a hot race day and went, I am really pretentious, and I would like someone to hold an umbrella over my head.
Can I get 2?
Exactly. And a nice cold Perrier while I'm sitting here would be nice as well.
Yeah, I know. In fact, I think I saw Rene Lara was having a little bit of trouble with the heat before this race actually started. He was down, about to go into the grid, and had down, by the looks of it, at least 1 water bottle, perhaps 2, sitting in his car. So the heat definitely playing there. By the way, Tom Van Wee comes sailing by yet again, an even faster lap time, 152.399. That's his best lap so far. So he's only speeding up, basically, out there.
Yeah, those will likely be the fastest laps of the day. His 1:52.399, his fastest lap in his last lap. So that is impressive. Usually, once the tires get a little hot and slick, the lap times go down a little bit. But that's not the case for Tom Van Wee. He seems to be clicking off faster laps each time.
And we'll see if he can maintain that pace. Basically, is what we'll have to watch the next time. And poor Robert Kazin, who started out, by the way, with a 3-second lead, basically after turn number 1 here in this race, has now dropped down to 33 seconds behind Tom Van Wee. A big gap opening up between them. So unfortunate indeed for Robert Kazin. He's still leading the P2 group, though. That said, he can't be too particularly happy about it, but he got some good times in.
There you go. I want to take a second while we've got a moment here to give a big shout out to Bill Gailey. He is a longtime volunteer with us out here at Cal Club. He is in the midst of a cancer battle, and we just want to let you know that we are thinking about you, and we know you love coming out here, and we miss you, and we wish you all the best. I know we had a chance to do a little Zoom call with him yesterday after the end of racing, and a lot of the folks out here were able to chat with him for a few minutes. So I just want to send a big hug out to Bill Gailey and his family, and for all of what they're going through there. So. All right, back to racing action. Again, Tom Van Wee now has a full lap lead over the field. Again, we expect that. It's a faster car, faster class, so it's not surprising. And the P2 cars, though, I'm interested to see where the second place car comes across here. Robert Kazin is first, Renee Lohr second, and we'll be seeing that in just a minute.
They each seem to sort of have established their own pace here right now. I don't think even among the P2s, there's that much desire to really press the issue. That's the way it goes sometimes, right? When you're all about the same and you all kind of just want to run your race. And there are other races coming up. You and I were talking about this yesterday, Brian. There are events coming up, and this is a good opportunity for these guys to get their cars in tune, get some on-track time experience. Well, speaking of gearing up for runoffs, you're taking the podcast on the road, Brian. You are going out there, and you're going to be doing some exciting stuff.
We are. We're taking the podcast to the runoffs for the first time. We'll be doing shows live with video. So, hide the women and children. I'll be on TV. And myself and Greg Ginsburg and our cast of friends and family. And when I say family, I mean racing family. And we're all going to get together, and we're going to do 3 shows every day starting on Friday of the runoffs. So there'll be a breakfast at the runoffs, runoffs halftime show, and runoffs after dark, where we will talk about all the day's action and get you set up for the next day. And all those will be streamed live on the Racing Network, as well as, I think, on SCCA's YouTube channel as well. And I'm pretty certain they're going to have a link on SCCA.com. We're still working out some of those particulars. But looking forward to it, taking the whole crew out to Virginia.
Yep.
And it's going to be a big doings.
Sponsored by Goodyear.
Oh, that's true. How should I? I'm the one that's not supposed to forget that. Thank you. We're sponsored by a bunch of people. Goodyear Racing Tires and Vintage Racers for Rescues are our presenting sponsor. And then, at the risk of forgetting someone, Spark Virtual Racing, which puts together sim rigs, they're a sponsor. And we've got, let's see, who else is there? I'm going to pull it up. We'll talk about the rest of the sponsors in just a minute.
The whole crew. It'll be a heck of a time. You guys are gonna have a great fun out there at the runoff. It's gonna be well worth listening to and seeing the action. One of a handful of SCCA Cal clubbers who are heading their way out there.
Yes, Spark Virtual Racekeeper, which is a data acquisition company. They put a little unit in your car to record video and the data acquisition from the car and put it over the video. That's pretty cool. And then Cruise Associates, they're coming on board to sponsor our Veterans Challenge. We're going to give an award at the end of each race day to a veteran racer. So we're all excited about that kind of stuff as well. Also, a big shout out to Blaze Coaching, Dion Von Moltke and his group. They're also part of the team and helping us make the trip. So good times, good times. 21, almost 22 minutes into this race. We're about 3 laps to go. Next time by, we might get the white flag here. And Tom Van Wee still has a commanding lead. Now it's 2 minutes and 1 second was the gap. So it looks like either Robert Kazin sped up a little bit or maybe Tom had a moment and went off track a little bit. But still, even with that, over a 2-minute lead between first and second. All right. Just waiting to see how this one plays out. There is Tom Van Wee crossing the line. Another fast lap.
Wow.
Fast lap, last lap.
Yeah.
12 laps in. A 152.158. He's knocking on 151's door.
That's impressive, actually.
Exactly.
To be honest, I mean, you were just saying, usually by this point in time in the race, the tires are getting a little worn out. You're kind of not blazing through. This actually matches the pattern that we saw out of Tom Van Wee yesterday, though, where he kind of just got more and more aggressive as the race went on, just trying to take it faster and faster, really see what that Formula Atlantic could do, and well, he's showing it right there. Heck of a time. It sounds like, from what I hear from scoring, the next lap will be the last lap. So when we see Tom Van Wee come by next time, that will be our white flag, and we will be ready to move on here out of this group of 4. Rene Lower coming across the line just now, setting a 2:06.462. Also his fastest lap on the day at lap 11. So apparently that's developing into a bit of a trend right here. Robert Kazin comes sailing by here as well, a full minute now behind Tom Van Wee in terms of a gap.
Oh, yes, 1 minute. You're right. I'm looking at the wrong column on the scoring sheet. Oh, boy.
Curious to see when Andy Chan comes by, if he'll also set his best lap time here at lap 11.
Yeah.
Just heating up, quite literally.
Well, and a lot of times, especially when you've got a minute lead, late in the race, you're not going faster. You're just kind of cruising to the finish. So kudos to him, though, for not mailing it in.
No, not at all. They've all been putting a good shift in out there on the track today, and that bodes well for our races to come as well. Here comes the white flag for Tom Van Wee as he pulls through Sunrise and then powers right past us up into Sunset.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about Sunrise and Sunset, here's what we're talking about here.
It's funny, I actually think that might be one of the reasons why this is a little bit more unpopular on that counterclockwise configuration, because when we're running clockwise, we often see a lot of drivers making passes in that Sunrise turn, coming off the straight in front of the tower. A lot harder to do that into that Sunset turn. It's a much sharper turn. It makes it a lot harder to get the effective sort of pass setup that they want to see. By the way, on your screen, you will see Tom Van Wee powering his way up into the grapevine, turn 11 right there, and powering his way right back down. A little bit of dust kicked up, but he should be coming in for his final lap. We were doing victory laps yesterday. I think they've put the kibosh on it today, not for any other reason than just to speed things up and keep them out of the heat.
That's right. Get the drivers back to the water as soon as possible. So just a couple seconds here, you're going to see coming out from behind the timing and scoring pylon there, you're going to see that yellow car is going to come around the final corner for the day and make their way down towards the start-finish line. I believe that is Tom Van Wee right now that you'll see. The checkered flag is out, and he is going to be our race winner. Now we will look for Robert Kazin, who is now a full lap down. Or maybe not. Sometimes the timing and scoring board is hard for me to understand. I don't know which one of the P2 cars right now, but I am seeing a large amount of smoke coming out of that car. That looks like it's engine smoke, and it is slow. It is slowing down very quickly, so that looks like we may have a blown engine on one of our P2 cars.
Looks like it's Robert Kazin who has been afflicted. He is still smoking on the right rear of his car. He came down through turn 11. They're going to have to send a track inspector out there to take a look, see if there was any problems with that. He's still smoking. We can't see it, but I hear them talking about it across the radio. So an unfortunate end to the race for Robert Kazin, and I had heard chatter by our flaggers, our corners, speculating that he had a little bit of an engine problem earlier, so maybe that's just the final manifestation of it, and he kind of has come limping here towards the straight in through Sunrise, and he's going to finish the race, but at a very sedentary pace, to say the least. Go on then, lad. Not smoking as he came across the straight right there, but he does finish his race. A bit of a rough end for Robert Kazin. He pulls in to immediately get the tech check done, but his car seems relatively intact. Meanwhile, Tom Van Wee is pulling in after his final lap and just waiting on the last two to finish up.
All right, did we give a full field rundown yet? We should get that done.
Let's do it. Full field rundown here for Group 2 this weekend.
And I want to congratulate those folks. We're also going to have a bit of a break here as the track crews go out and check out to see if there was any oil laid down by that number 12 car. And if there is, that may take a little time for them to clean up. So we're going to take a break here for just a few minutes. And once we get ready to start the next race, we will come back on and do that. You are listening to the Cal Club race stream, brought to you by Porterfield Brakes. If you need help with race brakes and a bunch of other race products, go to porterfield-brakes.com. and welcome to the Cal Club Race Stream presented by Porterfield Brakes. We are out here at Buttonwillow Raceway Park for the double regional divisional races here this is the 4th of September 2022. I'm Brian Belansky. Joining me here this weekend,
Pole position, number 37, Jeremy Rudder, in a 2003 Mazda Miata from Sherman Oaks, California.
and you will see the cars heading over through the grapevine way off in the distance there on our camera. They'll be coming into view in just a second. It's about halfway through the pace lap. You can see the pace car there, and now the other cars coming through. Today, we are working on track configuration number 25 here.
It's about 3 mile length, 3.1 miles, I think, in total. And it is, yeah, as you said, counterclockwise, which is something that some of the racers are not too happy about, but they've all adapted relatively well. This Miata group, they gave us some good racing yesterday, so hopefully we'll be able to see that again. Big field, they're a competitive bunch, and it'll be a real treat here, Brian, to see what they can muster up for us here on this fine Sunday morning. The lights are out on the pace car, and we should be seeing them coming up in not too long a time from the turn here leading into sunrise, and hopefully we'll get a nice clean start on this race.
Yes, yesterday's race, the first lap, the start was waved off. The starter was not happy with what she saw. We'll see if she likes it today. Here they are on the main straight, looking fairly well put together in groups 2x2. And Tracy Kane, the starter, likes what she sees. She waves that green flag. There are the racers as they go past the start-finish line towards the first corner. And it looks like everyone seems to be negotiating that first corner just fine. No dust. That's our indication of problems. And thankfully, there's not a lot of things to hit out here if you have an incident, except for maybe another car. There's no big cement walls to drive into, just lots of dust.
Very true indeed. But, it's worth pointing out, even if you go off, it's not something that's a lot of dust getting chalked up into the engine and dirt and grit and scrub. It's an unpleasant experience, not something you want to deal with if you can avoid it. But yeah, they did come across right there, and they were in racing formation. They were moving around and jostling just a little bit. We'll see if there was any big positional changes. We of course should clarify that we can't see very well down towards the kind of east loop, the S's and the Star Mazda turn, Phil Hill, but we'll get them when they come back into the Riverside turn, which is a big, wide, sweeping turn leading into a dog leg here, and hopefully we can give you a better idea of what's going on. And, well, sure enough, we do, and there is a little bit of dust out there, but a bit of a struggle at the front. It looks like number 37, or number 73, I should say, is under assault right there. No, Jeremy Rudder is struggling, so in that 37 car, and I believe it was David Varco the Elder, or maybe Clement Lee, who was pushing up on the right side of him. They're both red cars, so it's a little difficult to tell the difference between the two of them, but we'll get a little bit of further clarification. They're heading down into the West Loop right now, coming off of Phil Hill. Or the grapevine, my
There you
apologies.
go. Yes, definitely. Pass into the grapevine for the lead. We'll look at that. It's probably going to be Evan Jacobs, I think, was the person making that pass. We'll find out for sure. Evan Jacobs has some fans. I feel all right in the chat says, let's go, Evan Jacobs. Woo woo. I love Evan Jacobs. I feel all right. If you're out at the racetrack, I feel all right. You'd feel great. There you go. There's our field as they cross the start-finish line. David Varco first. So that was Varco in the 98 car making the pass on Jeremy Rudder going into Grapevine. Clement Lee second. Evan Jacobs, who I believe won yesterday's race.
Yes.
He is in fourth right now, and then Austin Varco is in fifth.
Yeah, yesterday we kind of saw that pack who are currently leading this race. They were the leaders yesterday as well, a little group of four that raced quite tightly together against one another and really kept it close up until the bitter end. Unfortunately, Joseph Bogarden, the number 2 car, had a little bit of a hiccup coming out of the Sunrise turn, went off, kicked up an almighty cloud of dust, but looks like he was able to get back on the track without too much hassle, though certainly his timing won't thank him very much. Best lap overall, by the way, 2 minutes 11 seconds on that first lap for David Varco. Not far behind him, about 0.6 of a second, let's round up there, is Jeremy Rudder. Clement Lee not far behind Jeremy Rudder at all. So that is the race to watch. And actually today, Austin Varco, the son of David Varco, is hanging in on that pack as well. He was a little bit out last time. He kind of maintained 5th position throughout the race, and he's dropped back a bit here today as they'll come down through that dog leg, but he's definitely trying to be part of that sort of front group of racers here.
Well, and what he wants to see is that front four start like racing each other strong, because once they do that, that will allow him the opportunity to catch up. And he's already making a little bit of a catch up. I don't know if you were able to see it on the screen off of the distance there, but the third place car put a wheel off there on the right-hand side. That was Clement Lee. You saw a little puff of dust there. That came from him. But as long as those 4 cars up front don't get into just a freight train draft, that will give the 121 car of Austin Varco a chance to catch up here. We should see them coming into our view in just a minute here on our screen. And once they do that, you will see that unlike yesterday, these cars are all pretty well packed up. Again, another puff of dust. Looked like it was the first place car that put off. And now we have a pass for the lead going across the start-finish line. Jeremy Rudder is now your race leader, even though it doesn't say so on the timing charts. We only get a timing chart at start-finish, so we don't have multiple loops here. So David Varco was the leader at the stripe, but just after that, Jeremy Rudder took the lead. So.
Yeah, Jeremy Rudder did a good little maneuver right there, kind of just slipped on the inside of David Varco as they came down through the straight. Knew when to put the speed on, probably saw that puff of dust maybe, and saw that little off run and took it when he had the opportunity. John Gorman, by the way, in 12th place overall, the back of the pack, had a unfortunate incident. He ran off the track as well, so he's now towards the back of everything. Interesting to note, pretty much every time they come up into the grapevine, at least one driver seems to be misplacing a wheel. That's a place where a lot of our drivers over this day as well have kind of struggled. So that's a turn to be dreaded with some elevation as well.
And unlike yesterday, when Jeremy Rudder kind of stepped away from the field and drove off, basically making it a race for second place, the top 5 cars still really keeping it together here. And that's a actually a more normal scenario here with the Spec Miata group. It's usually you get a group of 3 or 4 or 5 cars up front and they drive away from the field, which is exactly what's happened here today. That didn't quite happen yesterday. It was just one car who was able to drive away, and the race was for second. So, of course, as announcers, we're like, yes, we've got more to talk about today.
Oh, they're fighting hard. There's not that separation at all, Brian. And these Miata drivers, they're a competitive bunch. They like racing one another. I saw a gaggle of them over at Willow Ranch last night, all sitting at a table. So they were there chit-chatted up, trash talking. They looked like they were ready to go and get out on the track again. So happy to see them and glad to see what they can run with.
Here they are just coming across the start-finish line again. As you can see, another puff of dust from the third-place car. That was Clement Lee this time. A lot like what Tristan was saying about the Grapevine, coming out of that final corner onto the main straight is also a place where you're pushing really hard and want to get the best exit speed for this second longest straightaway on the racetrack. So that's not uncommon there to see that puff of dust. And that's exactly what happened. So as we talked about earlier, Jeremy Rudder was able to keep the lead for that full lap. David Varco slipped back to second. Clement Lee now third. Evan Jacobs is in fourth. And then just a little bit further back is Austin Varco. He is a second to back from the fourth place car, but still well within the draft and not out of this discussion at all. We still have almost 23 minutes left in this race. I'm sorry, almost 17 minutes left in this race, so a lot of time to go.
Yeah, and it looked for all the world like Evan Jacobs tried to make a little move there coming down into that sunset turn, just dropped again on the inside corner. Might have actually managed to slip by Clement Lee, and as they come now through that Riverbend turn, it does look to be the case that Evan Jacobs has opened up the gap between him and Clement Lee, and Austin Varco, watching it all go down, just very patiently clinging on to the back of this group of five, really pushing his Mazda to stick up with them. It does indeed look like Evan Jacobs has David Varco in his sights now, but another puff of dust on that Grapevine. These Miata drivers just can't seem to settle on that elevation change turn. Little bit of a battle farther back in the pack too. You'll actually see that on your screen in the Grapevine. I'm not sure exactly what cars that is. I think it might be Joseph Bogard and Christopher Hamilton there chasing one another further back. As a note, your best time overall so far in this race with 3 laps down is a 209.5 coming out of Evan Jacobs. And speaking of Evan Jacobs, he's gunning again on that inside into Sunset. This time he's trying to get around. It appears to be Clement Lee. It was David Varco he passed on the last lap. Now, Varco the elder and Varco the younger are sitting in 4 and 5 respectively. Jeremy Rudder, though, still maintaining a relatively convincing lead. He's about 0.4 seconds ahead of Clement Lee, who now has to watch his rear here as Evan Jacobs will try and get around him. Handful of other cars coming over the line shortly thereafter. A couple of good lap times there. Gabe Estrada Jr. setting his best lap so far, as did Joseph Bogard. It is continuing to remain quite hot out on the track. We are starting earlier today because of that heat, consistently getting warmer and warmer, currently sitting at about 88 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 31 Celsius there. Thank you, Google, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Fahrenheit terminology, might be listening from abroad. And it's impacting these drivers. It's impacting their vehicles, that's for certain. Checking out the dog leg right now. Speaking of impact, it looks like there's been a bit of a problem here for that number 121 car of Varco the younger. Austin Varco not able to hang with that front pack anymore, has dropped relatively far back from them. So unfortunate, he really was putting it through its paces, trying to keep up. And up in that front group, things are getting more tense. Another big puff of dust. It looks like it was Clement Lee who just skipped off the side there, coming down out of the Grapevine. You might have actually seen that on your screen if you're watching via the YouTube feed. That means that heading down into the big turn there through the I-5, he might be in danger of getting past. And sure enough, coming now into Sunrise. Now Clement Lee is still hanging on here, very eager to try and get by Jeremy Rudder in the lead, wants revenge for yesterday. And in fact, this group of 3, Jeremy Rudder, Clement Lee, and Evan Jacobs, have really put themselves ahead. And it looks like David Varco might be having a bit of a mechanical error, because he is pulled over to the right side of the straight near the tower and slowing down dramatically in his Mazda.
You know, it's kind of like you don't feel like you're surprised with the weather and the temperatures and And some of these cars later in the season, it's been a long season of racing, so you hate to see that, but you kind of you're like, okay, I'm not completely surprised by that.
Well, there's some confusion now about what exactly is going on down there, and we can see a Mazda had pulled over off the side of one of the turns. I got the report through the headphones that 9-8 had pulled off, and it looks like he might be coming out. So David Varco has pulled off at turn 1 and is going to come back into the pit area. It looks like their race might be over for the day, which is unfortunate because he did put up a pretty good performance yesterday. What that has indicated for the race overall, though, is that Jeremy Rudder, Clement Lee, and Evan Jacobs, their own little group of 3 there at the front, are pretty much running their own race for podium positions now. Clement Lee is about 0.269 of a second behind Jeremy Rudder.
And we are coming up on the halfway point here, so we should take that opportunity to do a full field rundown here at the halfway point.
Sure thing. Let's give you the full field rundown here at the midpoint of this race. Sitting in first place, Jeremy Rudder, number 37. Second place, number 87, Clement Lee. Third place, Clement Lee is closing it. It was a 0.176 gap last time we saw them come by. Thank you, by the way, for your participation in chat. We appreciate your comments. If you guys are enjoying this, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow more of our racing broadcasts. We've got all sorts of exciting things here to show you. And speaking of exciting things, Clement Lee has finally made his move and pushed ahead into first place here. So Jeremy Rudder, a slight slip up there was all it took, and number 87 will power past and move into that top spot, which admittedly has been angling for it for some time. We know he desperately wanted it yesterday, too, and just couldn't find it. Jeremy Rudder's race not quite as effective as it was yesterday, and we'll get a good look at him here coming into Riverbend down towards the dog leg. Unfortunately for Jeremy Rudder, he might have even given up his second place slot. It looks like Evan Jacobs managed to get past him, but Jeremy Rudder does not appear to like the standing of the status quo. He's trying his own challenge now coming up into the grapevine. He was very close there for a second behind Evan Jacobs, but he couldn't quite find the opportunity to pass. A bunch of dust kicked up by all three of them from the looks of it, coming down out of that grapevine turn and disappearing into the I-5. And I don't know what happened there with Jeremy Rudder, but it does look like Clement Lee and Evan Jacobs at least temporarily managed to reclaim first and second place, respectively.
Well, and that is part of why we go racing. You know, it's you're trying to do your best. You might have a little mistake or a hiccup, and then the cars behind you go zooming on by. So that's a ton of fun here. I'm sure Clement Lee is happy about that. Evan Jacobs trying to get back up into the front of that race as well. And here they are coming across the line again. As you said, Lee, Jacobs, and Rudder, that's the new running order up front.
Here again in a similar position to yesterday is Austin Varco, number 121, who's happily ensconced in fourth place, just sort of running his own race. And this is essentially what he did yesterday as well, except he was in fifth. But you know, it's a good run, good clean run for him, honestly. But he undoubtedly wishes he was up there with the big three at the front. And here comes the rest of the pack, being led at the moment by Gabe Estrada Jr. A little bit of shifting beneath him as Joseph Bogart has moved up into 6th overall. Number 125, Chris Hamilton, now in 7th. David Mitchell has pushed up as well on the board, so a good race here for them. And Koslikowski has actually slipped up 2 places from the back of the pack, now sitting at number 9.
Just a heads up for everybody, still ahead after this race. We've got at 11:05 approximately. We've got our closed wheeled sedans and tin top basically group. Our production cars, B-Spec, GT cars, Spec Corvette, and touring cars and IT cars. Not all of those classes will show up, but we had 6 cars from 6 different classes yesterday. That's coming up around 11:05, and then around 11:40 is our Spec Racer Ford and Formula V group. So stick around for that after this race is over. There's a nice puff of dust put up there by the number 73 car. That number 73 car is John Gorman. So coming out of the final corner there, put a wheel off, and there is the signature Buttonwillow dust cloud. I think we should get T-shirts made with Buttonwillow and just a cloud of dust.
It would be appropriate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Looks like that group of 3 at the front has had a little bit of a bump here, actually. It appears that Evan Jacobs got the slightest clip from Jeremy Rudder coming up to turn 11. It looks like Jeremy Rudder just nudged him there with the nose to tail as they were coming through, perhaps over by the grapevine. Unfortunate, because it seems that Jeremy Rudder has lost some significant time thanks to that. Evan Jacobs, by the way, who last lap around was threatening to push through Clement Lee, but is only about 0.5 gap now between them.
And with less than 5 minutes to go, that is still a close enough gap for all 3 of those cars to still be in the mix here at the end. Without some sort of an issue, Austin Varco is pretty much out of the discussion at this point in time. And then Gabe Estrada is about 6 seconds. Gabe Estrada Jr. Is about 6 seconds back, or 9 seconds back from the 4th place car. So not much of an issue there as well.
Looks as though Gabe Estrada Jr. actually has got a bit of a problem there, because it was Joseph Bogart who slipped around him as they came up into Sunset Turn. Following our leader here, Clement Lee, Evan Jacobs, Jeremy Rudder, it does sound from what I'm hearing on the chatter from our corners that Jeremy Rudder might be having some sort of engine trouble or something. He's slowing down, he's hitting corners, and he's He's got a bit of an ugly sound to his engine, too, so something to keep an eye on right there. He might be suffering from some sort of mechanical fault.
I Feel Alright suggests the t-shirt should have Buttonwillow Raceway Park with the silhouettes of dust clouds.
Official submission coming through.
Sounds like someone is a creative type.
Yeah.
I like how their brain works.
I was described as a creative type once, and I didn't even know what to make of that.
I was described as a creative type once in a discussion with a math teacher who was explaining to my parents why I sucked at math.
Hey, that's why I suck at math,
Yep.
too, to be fair.
True story.
Our leaders
True story.
coming across the line right there. Jeremy Runner, I mean, despite the chatter that I've been hearing, still seems like they're in it to win it. He doesn't appear to have slowed down at all, still chasing the heels of Evan Jacobs. Evan Jacobs, though, can't quite close that gap with Clement Lee, despite his best effort, still sitting at about 0.5 there. Overall, I hear from scoring that our next lap will be our last lap. So if Evan Jacobs is going to make the play, he's got to make it soon. As I see them come across the line here, the rest of the pack, it does not appear, by the way, that deep down in there, there was an opportunity for Joseph Bogard to overtake. I believe he was trying to hunt down, was it David Mitchell? He didn't quite find him. No, Gabe Estrada Jr. he didn't find.
Right.
They've maintained their order pretty much as it is. And by the way, if you're following along on Race Hero, it will look all sorts of confusion right now. Don't trust it. Trust nothing on the internet at the end of the day, but especially don't trust Race Hero right now. Austin Varco is not in the lead.
Yeah.
Neither is Gabe Estrada in second place, though I'm sure they both would love to be there.
Well, and my Race Hero shows Clement Lee as the leader, so it depends on where you've logged in and whether you've refreshed or not. So one race to watch, though, and this one of the things I like about these big groups, there's a great race going on for fifth place between Gabe Estrada, Bogard, and Hamilton. Less than a second covers each car going 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So that's always fun to be a part of and watch as well. So not all the best action is happening at the front, although we do have a pretty good battle going on at the front, too.
More dust being kicked up, especially coming off that grapevine. They just cannot stop doing it. And it does look like in that mid-battle, Joseph Bogard has pushed ahead of Gabe Estrada finally. Here they come across the line looking at our starters. Everything seems relatively maintained. Jeremy Rudder hanging in there despite any mechanical troubles he might be having. And then, of course, we will take a quick look back there at 5th, 6th, and 7th. It does look like Joseph Bogard and Christopher Hamilton both have managed to get around Gabe Estrada Jr.
Christopher Hamilton's got a fan. Paul Butler says, "Let's go, Christopher Hamilton," on the chat. If you want to root for your driver, give them a shout out. Put it in the chat, and I'm happy to jump in and share those well wishes with the world.
We should be seeing that pack coming by relatively soon. Well, there's been a little bit of shifting right there. Gabe Estrada Jr. still managing to fend off both Joseph Bogard, Christopher Hamilton, and now David Mitchell in the mix here on the last lap. All three of them gunning for that 5th place spot, yet Gabe Estrada Jr. has just maintained enough of a gap that he might be able to hold on to that position coming through. Giving a look now at our leaders again. Still Clement Lee in the lead. Evan Jacobs pulling hard in there as well, but Jeremy Rudder now making up a little bit of a gap on Evan Jacobs, and that might be a bit of drama that plays out here at the tail end. They're come up into the grapevine. Evan Jacobs will try and apply the pressure, but kicks up a small cloud of dust there at the very pinnacle of the grapevine turn. We'll lose him again going down to the I-5. It looks like they're maintaining relatively even spacing here, though, so I don't know if Jeremy Rudder is going to be able to make up the difference on Evan Jacobs.
And we'll be waiting for them to come back into our view here on the live stream. It is going to be very interesting to see. It looked like Clement Lee probably had this all in hand, but the battle for second between Evan Jacobs and Jeremy Rudder still in question. Here they come towards the line. The checkered flag is in hand. There's your first, second, and third place cars. Your race winner is going to be Clement Lee Evan Jacobs is second, and Jeremy Rutter is third.
Yeah, just not enough time left there for Jeremy Rutter to make it through. Might have just had some mechanical problems. Big cloud of dust out at the Grapevine, by the way. Somebody really went sailing off right there, hopped right back on. But again, we did say earlier, sometimes when you go off like that, you'll mess your engine up righteously, just sucking stuff up into it. So
Yeah.
his technicians are probably shaking their heads right now, thinking about the mess that they're going to have to deal with.
I'm going to guess that was not putting a wheel off. I'm going to guess that might be putting almost all four of those wheels off.
It was the whole car. It was the whole car. I hear it right now. That would be number 75. David Mitchell was going in hot trying to get around Christopher Hamilton right there, and the turn got the better of him.
That's awesome. Paul Butler is watching and rooting for Christopher Hamilton at Darlington Raceway, home of the Southern 500 later on this evening, one of the best races on the NASCAR schedule. I'm guessing that's what Mr. Butler is there for. If you like what you're seeing, Paul, hit like and subscribe. And if anybody's watching, like and subscribe helps us a ton. And we appreciate everybody who's watching us today and this weekend as we grow this live race stream production over the next several years. We're going to be here bringing it to you for a long time. So like and subscribe so you know what's coming up next. All right, so I think it's time to do a race recap here. I think we got enough cars over the line. Let's take it away, Tristan.
So, starting at the top, your race winner, number 87, Clement Lee. In second place, number 35, Evan Jacobs. In third place, number 37, Jeremy Rutter. In fourth, number 121, Austin Varco. In fifth place, number 74, Gabe Estrada Jr., who fended off that whole pack behind him for almost the entirety of this race. That means that in sixth place, it's number 125, Christopher Hamilton. In seventh, number 2, Joseph Bogard. In eighth, number 75, David Mitchell, with a significantly more dusty Mazda Miata than he had a lap ago. In ninth place, number 24, Adam Kaslikowski. In 10th place, number 182, Timothy Gregorio. And then in 11th, number 73, John Gorman. Austin Varco, number 98, or David Varco, number 98, unfortunately, did not finish.
All right, that is our race recap brought to you by Inside the SCCA. You can hear that podcast on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Just look for the Racing Wire Podcast Network. All right, that's going to do it for this race. We'll be back here. We've got about a 10-minute worker break, so we've got a 10-minute break here between races and give our workers a chance to get some liquids and get off their feet because it is still hot out here. Our temperatures right now 90 degrees here with 2 races to go. So anyway, this is our live stream here, the Cal Club live stream, brought to you by Porterfield Brakes. You can find them at porterfield-brakes.com. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Take care.
We have number 5. That is the number 23 car of K. David Snow in a 1977 Volkswagen Rabbit from Orange, California. In 4th, number 86, Joseph Hong in a 1988 Porsche 944 from Chandler, Arizona. One of our outer staters here for the weekend. In position number 3, number 191, Richard James in a 2006 Mazda MX-5 from Trabuco Canyon, California. In 2nd place, number 52, Dale Schumacher, 2007 Mazda MX-5 from Henderson, Nevada. And then in our pole position, number 73, Christopher Qualls in a 2006 Ford Mustang from West Los Angeles, California.
And there you saw the group come by as they got ready for the green flag. That was a start that I think maybe would have been better thought of. A lot of racing, it appeared, before the green flag fell. But they're going, and they all got through turn 1 okay, it looked like. I think there was a Corvette in the back that decided it wanted to be in the front before it got to the start stand.
That is exactly what happened. A little bit of it looks like I'm just checking my grid again. I think there was a little bit of a mix-up. It was Christopher Qualls just shot up through the middle of the pack right there. I don't know what his game was.
I know what his game was. He was.
Oh, you know what his game was. Yeah, it's very true, very true. But he shot up through the middle of the pack at speed. That was a bit dicey. I think that's why I said, "Oh, he was hot to trot there coming out."
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that was exciting. We don't usually have that much exciting happening before the green flag or right at the green flag, but there we go. And we are out there racing, and
worth pointing out that every car in this group is from a different class, so technically they're all winners on the track right now. It's just a matter of finishing or getting halfway through, I guess, in order to qualify. But yeah, that number 62 car of Chris Quall is taking no prisoners here, but he's not alone out there in that attitude. There's a Ford Mustang now chasing him down as well, and that's something that he's going to have to take into account. I believe that's Ross Murray in the Ford Mustang, but we'll go ahead and wait until they come around again so we can confirm who's who out there at the moment, because I think we've got a little bit of a mix-up coming out of qualifying. So names are not where they're supposed to be.
Well, it does look like there was a pass going into and through the grapevine, so it looks as though Ross Murray did make that move. Now, I'm not quite sure if Christopher Qualls is deciding to give a couple of spots back, because he took a couple of spots early, kind of as like a make-good in the hopes to not get a black flag. But we will see what the case is when the cars cross the line here, and they are going to come into our view here right about now, and there you go. You're going to see that Mustang is your first-place car here as it comes by. Second place is Christopher Qualls. The third place car is going to be Dale Shoemaker, and then followed by Richard James in fourth place. And at some point in time here, we're going to see this Spec 944, beautiful yellow car come by. That is the car of Joseph Hong. And then David Snow is the car you're seeing on your screen here. This is the ITC VW Rabbit. Clearly the coolest car here this weekend. May not be the fastest Rabbit. This is a Rabbit and not a hare, because if it was a hare, it would be a hare faster than the Rabbit is right now. But no, if you're an old school SCCA IT fan, the ITC Rabbit is your favorite car here this weekend.
He is loud, though. I'll give him that. I was down there coming near the cafeteria earlier, and he came by going out to participate in the track event, and that thing was just snorting and roaring as it came tearing around. A beautiful, beautiful machine. And is that little 1977 green Volkswagen Rabbit. He's just out there having a good time, and that's what really matters. But it looks like Christopher Qualls is back on top now in that number 62 car. Ross Murray has fallen behind. Both powerful vehicles, I believe a Corvette and a Ford Mustang respectively. So they've got the engines to duke it out if they want to. And we'll get a better look at them coming down through the grapevine. You'll see, actually, Christopher Quall has wined out a little bit. Ross Murray can't quite catch up. In third and fourth, Richard James is trying to catch up with Dale Shoemaker, but Shoemaker looks like just has the slightest edge there over Richard James. Maybe we'll see a little bit of change going down through into the I-5, leading into the turn down there, which is blocked by trees, but that's the way it goes.
There you go. And there is Christopher Qualls coming into our view here in just a second. There he is, coming down the main straightaway. I think what happened at the start of the race is that he decided to give a position back, thinking that might prevent him from getting a black flag after that start. And once he gave the position back, he got back in the throttle and won after it. So. But yeah, so he's back in the lead. Ross Murray in the Mustang T3 car is in second. Touring 3 are basically mostly stock cars with some suspension modifications and that kind of stuff. Very limited to what they can do to those cars. But they take basically cars off the showroom, put a cage in them. If you remember the old showroom stock days, it's kind of the next generation of showroom stock, the touring categories. So we've got Touring 1, 2, and 3 out there. Possibly only one touring car here this weekend, a T3 car.
Yeah, both Christopher Qualls and Ross Murray certainly make their presence known as they come by the tower. Quite loud. Saw Christopher Qualls kicking out flames too. So not the bad kind though, the cool kind.
Exactly.
So it was all good right there. And there goes a car that's not kicking out any flames at all. The Rabbit comes by again. Gave David Snow. Diligent in his laps, hanging it. Christopher Qualls has opened up the gap between him and anybody else, so he's basically running his own race now, trying to beat his own time. He does hold the current lap time of 2:05.930, and he might be able to beat that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he did actually manage to do that. It looks like the 2, 3, and 4 slots have spread out a little bit as well. Everybody settling comfortably into a position they appreciate on the grid.
And if, as a kid, I always thought that loud equaled speed. And now when I look at the IT car in 6th place, I realize that that's not necessarily the truth.
That is not the case.
But in fairness, the ITC car is the slowest class, maybe the slowest class in the club. B-Spec or Formula V might be slightly slower, but ITC is maybe the slowest class of the club. So it should not be racing up there with that GT3 car and that T3 car, which are one of the fastest classes in the club. So we kind of joke about it, but it's not really it's not really any fault of the car.
Oh, no.
If there were a bunch of other ITC cars in this race, he'd probably be right there with the cars in his class. So we joke because we love.
I love it. I think it's been one of my favorite things to see all weekend long. It's a cool little car, and it really does power along.
Yeah.
So it's happy to see it. Christopher Qualls powering along, by the way, 2:05.194 on his last lap, his best lap overall. About 16-second gap between him and Ross Murray. So that's probably done and dusted for the day there. It's just a matter of Christopher Qualls being able to actually complete his laps as it does get hotter out there. That is something that we've mentioned a couple of times in the broadcast, and we won't stop mentioning. Currently sitting at about 91 degrees, which means by the time that our last racers here of the day take the field, it'll be almost 100, I think. It'll getting close to it for that Spec Racer Ford group, and they will no doubt be unhappy about that, but they will do their best.
And as you were talking, that race should get underway right around 11:40, and that'll be our final race on this broadcast. Of course, we'll be back in October doing more races here. Our next race on our schedule is
No tractor out today, though. That's a little disappointing, but it has made kicking up dust cloud reading easier because now we don't have to worry about the tractor dust. We only worry about our car's dust.
That's true. That's true. I'm Brian Belansky. Tristan Parker here with me today, bringing you the live coverage all weekend here from the track. And I hope that everybody who's watching at home is enjoying what they're seeing. Again, this is for those of you who are tuning in. We've got just one camera up today. We're testing some other parts of our stream here. Our official launch for the Cal Club live stream is in January. So these last couple of events we're using to perfect the product as much as we possibly can before we go live in January. So.
Well, it's been a very straightforward 10 minutes here, 4 laps in. Everybody seems to be doing their best out there. A very clean race so far as well. Hopefully it stays that way. Ross Murray and Dale Shoemaker setting their best laps on that lap number 4. A 212.836 and a 212.780 respectively. 2 second gap actually between Shoemaker and Murray, but I imagine that gap will remain about the same. Richard James in the 191 car is about 4 seconds behind Dale Shoemaker, so they're all relatively split out among one another. Of course, Joseph Hong and David Snow are towards the back of the pack. Joseph Hong in a very distinctive bright yellow car comes sailing across the line. Number 86, that spec 19 or that Porsche 944 there, the 1988 car, one of the oldest cars on the field today. I think the Volkswagen Rabbit does actually take the title of the oldest car racing here today. There's a 1982 Glamdring in our final group, but it is that 1977 Volkswagen that wins it out. Yesterday we had an Opel out there as well, but not today. Did not race.
Yeah, that Opal's a cool car.
It is a cool car. Yeah, this group tends to be kind of an amalgamation, a sort of Frankensteinian monster of a variety of different vehicles a lot of the time, and it's quite fun. It's a little small day, only 5 cars out there, but when it gets bigger and you just see a carnival of strange cars lining up on the grid of making various loud noises, it can be really enjoyable. And presumably in October, November, or in December, when things are a little cooler out here, we'll be seeing more and more cars join in. I think the 108-degree temperatures or whatever it was at the peak out here, even with the early starts, 108 today. I think it was about 109 yesterday. I think that did deter some of our drivers from coming out. Understandably so, to be fair.
Franken what?
Frankensteinian. I don't think that's a word, but I like it.
It's a fantastic word, even if it's not.
Yeah.
I learn something new every time I
It's
sit
the
down
doctor, not the
next to you.
monster. I feel like every time it has to be mentioned, if somebody doesn't do it, nobody's being pretentious enough. So, but yeah, Frankensteinian conglomeration out there, and it is truly that sometimes.
All right, so we are coming up on our halfway point here, and last time we did this, someone on our chat was nice enough to alert us that there was no audio for the mid-race rundown in the last race, which means I don't think there was one in the previous race either. We fixed that problem, so we're going to do a mid-race rundown with sound this time.
Indeed. Here we go on our midway's rundown. In first place, number 62, Christopher Qualls in the GT3 class. In second place, number 74, Ross Murray. In third place, number 52, Dale Shoemaker. In fourth place, number 191, Richard James. In fifth place, number 86, Joseph Hong. And in sixth place, number 23, K. David Snow.
That is our back to the live action. Christopher Qualls looks a lot like yesterday, doesn't it?
It is very similar to the race we saw yesterday. Christopher Qualls has opened up a big gap here, Brian, and he's just happy to maintain it. He's slowed down a little bit on his laps as well, so he's not putting too much pressure on his car. Still maintaining a comfortable lead. His last lap number 6 right there, was a 2:09. Ross Murray is sitting at about a 2:11 on his lap number 6, so a little bit faster in general. In fact, lap number 6 was good for a lot of these guys. Ross Murray, Dale Shoemaker, Richard James, and Joseph Hong all set their best lap times there on 6. So really coming into their own as you hear Christopher Qualls scream in past us just one more time. 2:07. So consistently slowing down, but with the significant gap between him and anybody else in the race, he can pretty much take this at his own pace. Something absolutely disastrous would have to happen at this point in time for him not to finish.
Yeah, about 9 laps to go with not a ton of close racing out there. This is when people start to try to just kind of get to the finish line, and especially with the temperatures now here hovering in the 90s. We're now up to 93 degrees. We might get close to 100 degrees before all is said and done this afternoon, and that is why we're racing so early out here. Typically our races start closer to this time of the day, and then we race deeper into the afternoon. But we went out and talked with the drivers and said, you know, with the temperatures in the forecast, why don't we think about using what we call our summer schedule, even though technically it still is summer, you know.
As well be, given the temperature.
But so we don't normally do it in this race, but that's probably the smartest decision we've made this weekend. And it's not just the drivers. We've got people standing out in the middle of the field here holding flags and everything. They've got a little bit of sun protection, but it is still hot out there. Lots of the volunteers working these races do not have the luxury of an air-conditioned announce booth like we do. True. So we have zero to complain about sitting up here. Even when the equipment runs a little warm in here, it's like, I'm not saying a word.
It is. It does run a little hot, but no, it's nothing compared to being out there.
No.
Worth pointing out, too, that number 74, that's Ross Murray, getting reports in from the track that he might be suffering some sort of mechanical failure. A hot oil smell being described on him as he passes by. So his race might be getting close to the end here if there is a serious issue. He's already completed his halfway mark here, Brian, so he doesn't need to stay out there. He can bring it in for repairs. If he chooses to, he might push it a little bit harder, but we will be keeping an eye on that, make sure everything's clear. And that would also explain why he's slowing down just a little bit right now. I just saw him coming through towards I-5 and really cutting his speed dramatically, so he might be preparing to put it behind the wall.
That is possible. And again, like you said, he's past the halfway point.
Yeah, he doesn't have to
so
keep pushing it.
There's no reason to incur an expensive repair if you can bring it in. Sometimes a little oil leak becomes a big oil leak, and that becomes a $10,000 motor rebuild. Yeah. So.
Oh, he's powering through. He just came by here on the straight, so it looks like he's going to stick with it at least for now. But we'll definitely keep an eye on it. It'll hardly be the first car that doesn't finish today.
And the question is, does he even know that there's
That's
that smell?
true.
Because he might not be able to smell that in the car. I don't know if he has crew members out on pit road that might be able to smell it as he goes by. So sometimes the person driving the car is so focused on what's going on that if it's a slight smell of oil, they might not even smell it.
Yeah, they might not, and that's unfortunate. I mean, the last thing you want to have with some of these big races coming up, I don't know if Ross Murray is going to runoffs or what have you, but the last thing you do want to have here as kind of people are using it as a prep weekend for bigger and better things, is you don't want to have a big mechanical fault that you have to deal with in the long run. It just costs you money, and that's something that probably going to actually touch on again when we get to our Spec Racer Fords, our next group and our last group. They've been having some engine troubles, a couple of them, and this is sort of their testing ground for races to come up for future as well. So that'll be something that we'll need to discuss. But speaking of runoffs, by the way, you might as well give an opportunity here, Brian, and talk about what the podcast is going to be doing out there in Virginia.
Definitely. We're taking the Inside the SCCA podcast to the runoffs for 9 live shows, all on race days. 3 shows each race day, a breakfast at the runoffs, halftime show during lunch, and then runoffs after dark. We'll be talking with drivers and crews and SCCA officials and some of the sponsors. A real good opportunity to basically look behind the scenes, kind of a little bit about how the sausage is made, meet some of the really amazing characters in this club, and we're going to do all of that for 3 days, the 30th of September, October 1st and 2nd, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Of course, the Inside the SCCA Live from the runoffs presented by Goodyear Racing Tires, and the Vintage Racers for Rescues, a really cool group of vintage racers who've gotten together to pool their money to help rescue pets. So, some of us race car drivers are animal lovers too. And I have a dog named Shelby. Yes.
I have a dog.
Named for Carol Shelby, one of the finest race car engineers in the world.
There you go.
So that's the only thing I got to name in my household, so I took advantage of it. So, but anyway, looking forward to it. There'll be more information all over the podcasts and the interwebs and everything. So,
Oh, it's going to be a real heck of a time out there, Virginia.
And I will also say, all of the races are going to be live streamed as well.
Yep.
So we're going to, talk up and until the racing starts, and when the racing stops, we'll talk some more, and we're going to fill in the gaps between the races. So some of the finest racers in the country will be descending on Virginia International Raceway, where we're going to crown 26 national champions, and I cannot wait. It's been many years since I've been to the runoffs. Used to go every year, and hopefully now we'll start going every year again. So.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing it. Look forward to hearing it, I guess I should say, but it'll be a good time regardless. Just an update on Ross Murray. He is still in the race, though I have heard reports that he's smoking a little bit on one of his right rear tires. But now that I see him coming down into the dog leg, it doesn't look like anything too visually bad. So presumably he'll finish this race out. He doesn't have much left. Honestly, only about 3.5 minutes left of racing here on the track. So maybe another lap or two at most. K. David Snow, speaking of laps, set his best lap time on lap number 8, 2 minutes, 34 seconds, 0.842.
Big shout out, Michael Bailey. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you're watching and you like it, subscribe and like and hit the bell so that you can be alerted every time we go live to do new stuff. That's how we get things done here. It's the Racing Network on YouTube, and we're real happy for those who have come out to enjoy what we're doing today, and we appreciate all of the people watching and listening.
Well, it'll be our last lap coming up here. The next time Christopher Qualls comes around, it will be the white flag out to usher them to the kind of checkered flag lap. As it was described by scoring just now on the radio, the leader is the one you'll hear coming, which is very true, because that is a loud Corvette. He knows it, too, and you can tell that he loves it. Can't blame him for that at all, to be fair. Loud cars got to go fast and vice versa.
That's right. That's right.
It wouldn't be fun if it didn't make a lot of noise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
One of these days I'll tell the story of my first time at the racetrack in a loud car as a kid, and I jumped about 6 feet off the ground. But we'll tell that story down the road.
You'd be surprised sometimes when they come whipping by. You don't really think about it. Then you're standing down there near the wall or whatever, and they go zoom, and you're, whoa.
And my father saw it coming and didn't warn me.
Of course not.
Of course not.
That's peak
Yep.
dad.
That's what dads do.
Yeah. White flag is up and ready to go, and that should put us into our last lap here. Just as soon as we see Christopher Qualls turn that sunrise corner, you'll see him on your screen as well. And then we'll be putting ourselves up towards the tail end of the events today. One last group to go, the Spec Racer Ford. Stick around for that. That'll be a good, exciting race. It certainly was a good one yesterday.
And there's Christopher Qualls in your screen now, and out of your screen taking the white flag. And, of course, he makes the rabbit look really slow going past him. But we're on our final lap. Christopher Qualls, he's got about 2 minutes and, 2 minutes and 10 seconds away from a checkered flag.
One of my other favorite parts about that rabbit is down in the paddock. That rabbit and the trailer and the RV that's attached to it, they took pole position. They're right there next to the grid. It's great.
All right, we should be seeing the Christopher Qualls lead car, number 62. That is a Corvette coming across through the dog leg. And then once we see that happen, you'll see him come into your view as he goes through the grapevine. Way off in the distance on this camera angle. That's right, here he comes through the back stretch. We're not using the dog leg today. We're driving around the dog leg, but he is, the dog leg is a little section, a little bit closer to us there. It's a legit dog leg. And so now you'll see him coming into your view here way off in the distance on our camera there. There he is coming in right now. That is your lead car making the final trip through the grapevine. He'll go behind our timing and scoring pylon there. And in just about 30 seconds, you'll see him come back into view on his way to take the checkered flag. And for the checkered flag call, Tristan Parker.
Yeah, I'll try to keep an eye on where our leader is. We'll hear him before we see him, that's for sure. And the ominous approach of Christopher Qualls in his Chevy Corvette. Any moment now, he should be coming up into that sunrise turn, and he will emerge triumphant from behind the trees. And here he is, coming down the last one, snorting fire, too, as he comes his way down the straight. Powering through, giving it all he's got here to put on a little bit of show. The checkered flag, and he's across the line. And it is Christopher Qualls there for the finish, taking first place in group number 4.
And as all good announcers do, you made a race that had no real competition sound exciting at the checkered line.
It was a good finish. He was fire was coming out of the back of the car. What more do you want? You know, it looked good.
I always used to laugh when I'd hear other announcers do exactly what we do and make.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, that was exciting for nothing.
It becomes really fun too when you start watching sports on TV and you know when the guys are bored and they're trying their level best to keep it engaging. You can just tell if you've done it enough times that they're making the best of it. Especially when it's like a game or like a baseball game or a soccer match or something where it's just a devastation,
right? And
you can just tell that whoever they are in the commentary booth, they have to kind of keep it interesting, even though it's like 8-1.
Exactly.
There's not a match to it at all. Rest of the field's cleaning up here, so that should just about do it for our group 4. Let's go ahead and give a full 62, Christopher Qualls in the Chevy Corvette. In second place, number 74, Ross Murray. In third place, number 52, Dale Shoemaker. In fourth place, number 191, Richard James. In fifth place, number 86, Joseph Hong. And then last but certainly not least, perhaps even first place in our heart, sixth place, number 23, K. David Snow in that lovely 1977 Volkswagen Rabbit.
All right, that's going to do it for this race here out at Buttonwillow Raceway Park. We've got one more to go. You're listening to the Cal Club live stream brought to you by Porterfield Brakes. This is the Racing Wire Podcast Network and the Racing Network on YouTube. We'll be back in just a few minutes with our final race of the day.
In second place overall, number 61, Trevor Acker from Santa Clarita, California. And then in first place, your pole position, number 9, Brian Schubert from Huntington Beach, California.
All right, that's what it's going to look like when they take the start 25-minute races. We're going to be on track number 25 here. So that is what we're doing here. Our pace car now going down the back straight with a gaggle of Spec Racer Fords behind it and one Formula V, that Glamdring, which I found out is from not Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it is indeed.
I learn something new every day.
It's a sword.
There you go. You will see the cars way off in the distance going through the grapevine here in just a minute. There's the pace car, and you'll see the pack of cars coming behind. They will line up 2 by 2, and they will come to the start-finish line in just about, I would say, 30 seconds or so. And our starter, Tracy Kane, will determine whether or not they are formed up properly. And if she likes what she sees, she'll wave that green hanky, and we'll get going.
The green flag is up and ready to go, so hopefully we will see a good start.
We are waiting to see if the starter likes what she sees, and she does. The green flag is out, and we are racing. Final race of the day from Buttonwillow Raceway Park.
Now, Brian Schubert firing off right there early on, just getting inside Trevor Acker and trying to stave him off going into the sunset turn. Brian, we were mentioning earlier that there was some issues with these cars across the board. I know for a fact that Brian Schubert is getting a new engine put in after today's race. This is it, the last one for that engine. Trevor Acker yesterday had some serious engine issues, overheated, couldn't finish the race. That led from him dropping all the way out of second place to not finishing. Robert Edmondson, too, I think, has had a little bit of issues. His car is the newest of the SR3s out there, a 2023 model, but definitely something to keep in mind with all of these cars. Yesterday, both Trevor Acker and Ryan Schubert, who were fighting for first and second quite intensely, were really redlining to keep their vehicles in this race.
So I talked with Brian yesterday, and the issue is these cars are fastest when their noses are right up underneath the tailpipe of the car in front of them, and when that happens, there's no air going to the radiator of the second place car. And if you don't duck out on occasion to get some air to that radiator, that's when these cars overheat. So that's the skill that needs to be thought about, and they'll do a better job of it today, I'm sure.
Well, Trevor Acker is the one who's going to have to be dealing with that particular challenge. He is currently sitting just behind Brian Schubert, as you'll see them come down through that early point in the grapevine. A little bit of dust going up there from our third place car, Robert Edmondson. That's the 111 car. I think he might have just tailed off. Now, Robert Edmondson is an interesting driver. So yesterday, Brian Schubert took the lead off Trevor Acker. Trevor Acker had to pull out of the race, and for a while it looked like Brian was pretty much clear to win this. And then all of a sudden, Robert Edmondson, who had kind of been trailing in third, trailing in second, really put on a burst of speed at the very tail end. And, somebody hit a cone out there. That went sailing off onto the side.
That's right, committing severe conage.
But I was going to say, Robert Edmondson kind of powered out of nowhere yesterday, Brian, and got right up behind that number 9 car and tried to pass it.
Yep, definitely. And he was able to kind of hang out there all race and then get into the mix at the end. So that was pretty cool. You know, if it's 1 cone, it's a misdemeanor, and 2 cones is a felony?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go. Learning something new every day.
That's unfortunate for that poor cone. They sacrificed so much.
I know. What did that cone ever do to deserve that?
Exactly.
Unlike yesterday when Brian Schubert hung out in second place for the first half of the race and took over the lead for the second half of the race, he is leading right from the start today. At the line after the first lap, it was about 0.3 of a second, almost 0.4 of a second. So that's a little different scenario than we had. Definitely, I think with the heat, it's probably better to be out front because you don't have to worry about not getting air to that radiator, or as our friends on the other side of the pound call it, a radiator. And that's a good strategy if you can stay out front. But it might not be the best strategy right at the end. And of course, there's Trevor Acker making the play possibly to make the pass going into the Grapevine side by side. He's on the inside. Brian Schubert's on the outside. Now Schubert fights back just a little bit. You'll see him come into our view right now, and it looks like that the Schubert car is back in front, but that back and forth good for Robert Edmondson. That allows him to come back up and get on the tailpipe as well and be able to keep in the mix.
Yeah, Robert Edmondson actually really took advantage of that. Super closed the gap between the two of them. But to be fair, between Brian Schubert and Trevor Acker, that was a very dangerous moment for Brian Schubert right there. Trevor Acker had a very good line coming into the Grapevine, and it was really by dint of a very strong turn leading down into the slope that Brian Schubert was able to push himself ahead. Coming across the line right now, the gaps have opened up a little bit more in between the three of them, but not by much. About 0.46 of a second between Trevor Acker and Brian Schubert, and then 0.3, almost 0.4 of a second between Robert Edmondson and Trevor Acker.
Playing out a lot like yesterday, a couple of cars up front. They're going to do their thing. They're going to pull away from the cars a little further back if they work together. And it looks like they've done that a little bit. Michael Moshe's back a whole 8.5 seconds. A little further back, and that's basically checked out for the front three. It's really hard to make up that kind of a gap in this particular type of racing. So that's unless, of course, the front three cars make a mistake or get a little too racy, and then the fourth place car could try to claw back. But it doesn't happen very, very frequently. So.
Bit of a problem, actually, for Robert Edmondson, just hearing now. He might have been the individual who clipped that cone. And the cone has inflicted a little bit of karmic vengeance because he suffered damage on the front of his car, but got to focus on the action that's happening right now. Trevor Acker, again, coming into the Grapevine, pushing his way past the inside of Brian Schubert, and I don't think there's going to be any racing that can save this, and certainly not. Brian actually forced off the track right there, eats a corner, bunch of dirt coming down through the Grapevine.
And it does look like Robert Edmondson was able to slide past there as well. So that's going to be a two-position change here coming up on our second race, end of our third race lap here. And you know what? It might not be a bad idea for Brian to hang out there in third place for a little bit and recollect himself and get into a better position for later in the race.
Well, that was not a great scenario up there at the pinnacle of the Grapevine. It sounds as though 6-1 came in very hard, hit number 9, hit him on the side, pushed him off the track a little bit, and then Robert Edmondson clipped just a little bit of the side of number 9 as well. So these guys all know each other. That's the truth of it, and that's probably going to be something that's going to be discussed later today, because that cannot have made Brian Schubert, or I would imagine Robert Edmondson, very happy. Kind of aggressive driving coming out of Trevor Acker right there.
Yeah, well, that is part of the game, sadly, or not sadly, but it's part of the game. Sometimes there's a little argy-bargy going on out there. And, it happens. And thankfully, these cars are really forgiving when it comes to that. You were mentioning hitting that cone. The front of these cars, the little inlet for the radiator, the bottom portion is a piece of either sheet metal or sheet aluminum that is bendable. And then the top portion of that little radiator inlet is the fiberglass hood. So what happens is that bottom piece of aluminum or sheet metal bends up if it's hit and closes that. It's only about a 2.5, 3 inch gap for the radiator. You take half that gap away, and right away you've got a bunch of problems. The good news is you'll screw your race up, but you can come in and have a crew member bang on it with a foot, literally their foot, and bend it down enough so you can fix the overheating problem if that does happen.
Yeah, Robert Edmondson, I think his main issue is that he has some sealant tape dangling off there, and I don't know how bad his damage really is. It doesn't
Sure.
seem to have impacted his ability to race. He's still holding on to that second place spot now after that contact at the top of the grapevine. Worth pointing out that race control, there's no penalty being assigned here to number 61, Trevor Acker. It's just a nature of the beast,
That's
as it were.
a racing incident.
Yep, and here he comes tearing across the line. Trevor Acker now in the lead, sets our fastest lap of the spec racer so far at 1:59.8. Robert Edmondson closing in behind, 1.269 seconds behind. Brian Schubert is 0.265 of a second behind Robert Edmondson. So Schubert might be looking to make a pass here on Edmondson soon. I imagine that he's building up to put himself in a position where about halfway through he can begin to maybe challenge Trevor Acker back for that top spot.
I was able to get a bit of a look at the Robert Edmondson car as it came by, and I'm going to take a little closer look the next time by with my glasses on. But what I didn't see a damage that would indicate to me that there was going to be a big problem with overheating. Now, there could have been something else going on that we can't see from the naked eye from, 25, 30 yards away up in the booth. But I'll look more closely next time. Coming by the line right now, you just saw Mark Edwards. He's the lone Formula V in the group. Formula Vs are open-wheel race cars. They're based on the old Volkswagen Bug, the original, like the Herbie Volkswagen Bug. So the front end of the car, the front suspension is literally unbolted from a Volkswagen Bug and bolted onto these cars. The motor is the 1200cc naturally aspirated, which means it's an air-cooled car, and naturally aspirated and air-cooled 1200cc car. And, of course, the motors are tweaked for the best performance they can get. And then, of course, it is a regular tube frame Formula Car chassis, one of the oldest classes in the club. It's been around since the 1960s. A wonderful platform for drivers to learn how to drive a car fast that doesn't have a lot of power, which is where everybody should start learning how to drive. So here comes your race leaders across the line. Trevor Acker first. Brian Schubert's in second. Robert Edmondson is third. That's a swap for second and third. So Brian's starting to work his way back up. Collected himself after that little off track or that little bump and run. And, got to catch your breath, think about yourself, not doing anything stupid. And that sounds like it, or looks like that's what he's doing.
Looks like Brian has managed to get around Robert Edmondson there,
Yes.
and so he's put himself back in. Part of the reason for that, though, and it might be worth pointing out, is that Robert Edmondson is dragging a little bit of his front bit of his car. Apparently, nothing so significant that they're willing to pull him in.
Yep, that's that may be from that cone, obviously. So.
Sounds like Robert Edmondson, actually, that damage is bad enough that he's not going to want to continue. He's pulled off to the driver's left.
Wow.
And some sort of mechanical error, and might actually have to get towed out of there. Looks like he's done for the day.
All right. Depending on where he pulled off, the emergency crews will go and snag him. Hopefully, we can do it without going full course yellow, and we can let the drivers continue racing for the other, 85% of the racetrack. They'll only have to slow down in that section while the emergency crews are there. So.
Well, obviously, they don't want to leave him out there too long because it's hot.
Well, that's the other thing.
It's 90 now. I think it's 95 out there right now. They don't want to leave the poor guy sitting there for 14 minutes.
And that is something that we will do when the temperatures are like this. They might not need to move the car,
but the driver.
So that's exactly what's happening. When it's hot like this, they will send a tow truck that they wouldn't normally send during the race just to take them some water.
Fair enough.
And then as soon as the racing is over, they'll actually hook the car up and pull it out. But want to make sure these drivers don't overheat, and in these temperatures, that's the last thing we want is to send someone to the hospital for overheating.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely not.
Good move.
Not something they need to do, and it looks like
And you can see that tow truck coming down pit road down there. And they can actually pull the driver out of the car, let them sit in the tow truck with the air conditioning on. So if, in fact, the driver wants to do that. So good job, good decision there.
100%. Well, 6 laps in, 12 minutes in, it looks like the main thrust of the fight now will be between Trevor Acker and Brian Schubert. Brian Schubert did give us our best lap there on lap number 5 at 1:59.652, but we are halfway through, so about time for a recap here, brought to you by the Racing Network podcast, inside the SCCA podcast. There we go. I knew I was going to mess it up. There we go. I'll give you the full rundown here as it stands. In first place, number 61, Trevor Acker. In second place, number 9, Brian Schubert. In third place overall, number 16, Michael Moshe. In fourth place, number 37, Don Paula. In sixth place, number 74, Mark Edwards. And then number 111, Robert Edmondson, has been forced to pull out of the race.
That is your mid-race rundown, brought to you by the Inside the SCCA podcast, found on most popular podcasting platforms. All you have to do is do a quick search for Inside the SCCA or the Racing Wire Podcast Network. And there's a bunch of other cool podcasts on that network as well. Be fun to listen to. All of them car-related. So if you like to go fast, that's a podcast you might want to click subscribe to. Back to the race action. You'll see at the bottom there's a couple of cars on our pylon in, I guess that's tan or salmon colored highlights. I think I should find a better color for that. Those cars are off the track for one reason or the other. Robert Edmondson's got some mechanical problems, and I'm pretty certain Mark Edwards has decided that because there's no one else racing him, he's gotten to the halfway point, which makes him an official finisher, and in this case, an official winner, and he has decided to call it a day.
That's correct. Yeah, the glam drink just came off, saw him pull down into pit lane. And speaking of pulling into pit lane, Robert Edmondson just going in as well. Under his own power, though, Brian, for what it's worth. Actually got back on the track just as the tow truck was about to get there and decided he was going to finish out as much as he could, and then he pulls off. Still will get the DNF, but he is at least taking off here. And it looks like Mark Edwards and him, they're both done for the day, and fairly done.
We refer to that as a self-cleaning incident.
Indeed. Oh. No, 7-4 is not choosing to take off. He's been forced off. His engine has failed.
Oh, that's never good.
Yeah, so he is not a happy camper down there in the 1982 Glamdring. The unfortunate, the car has betrayed him just a little bit. He offered to try and maybe get him back into it, but I think he's just given up on the day. So technically he's a DNF as well, which is unfortunate indeed. Well, that leaves 4 cars in this race. Trevor Acker, Brian Schubert, Michael Moshe, and Don Paula. Big gap between Michael Moshe and Brian Schubert. Mostly it's Brian trying to catch up with Trevor there in that first place car. 2.1, 2.2 seconds, let's say, between them. So definitely their work cut out right there. Trevor Acker just continues to build up that gap. We actually see him and Brian there on the back stretch coming across our view from the tower. Brian Schubert just not able to make up the difference after that incident up on the top of the hill. over there that they're coming through now. The Grapevine, I mean, it's worth pointing out both of these guys are having engine troubles. They both are kind of on the last legs of their engines. Brian Schubert's engine will be replaced after today's race. Yesterday, Trevor Acker had some problems. His engine is in about the same place. So I just don't know if they have it in the car necessarily to really put in a big sort of impressive final showing here, though certainly if it is in there, I'm sure it will come out at some point in time. Meanwhile, Michael Moshe rolling down the backstretch here, just having himself a nice Sunday drive, and not far behind him is Don Paula in the orange and white there, the creamsicle car, making his way along. Our two leaders, Trevor Acker and Brian Schubert, come across. 2.341 seconds is the gap between them. And so not necessarily closing anytime soon, basically holding steady. That said, every once in a while with these spec racers, they do go kind of quiet in the middle, and then in the end game, all of a sudden, one of them will power up and try and get by the other. We saw Edmondson do something similar yesterday, so perhaps Schubert out there is thinking about a similar idea.
Well, and that's the time of the race to start thinking about that. With 6 minutes to go, that's going to be, 3 laps or so. And as we've talked about, and we talk about a lot, the best place to be most of the time going into the final lap is second place. Because you want to be the last person to make the last pass in the one spot where you can get that pass done. So so we'll see if that's the game plan for Brian as he tries to get caught up here. But he's got 2.5 seconds. He's got to catch up before that could even become a thought process.
Yeah, he's really got to demand a lot from his car in that kind of last 5 minutes here. And again, I just don't know if the car has it in it. It might be a simple mechanical issue. Again, coming down through the backstretch and heading up into the Grapevine are the two of them. It doesn't look like Brian has really made up that gap at all, though that said, a little bit closer coming down there out of the Grapevine, but he's got to at least close into a distance where he can really be a threat on the tail end. Meanwhile, Trevor Acker sort of giving it all he's got right now to keep that gap as wide as possible here and finish strong in this race.
The other thing to think about also is tires. We're in the second race of our weekend, both races well into the 90s, and tires don't like high temperatures. And if Brian is racing on the same tires that he raced on yesterday, he might not have as much grip today as he had yesterday. And that's not an uncommon thing for these racers to do, is to heat cycle their tires, let them cool off for 24 hours, and then bring them back the following day. So.
Well, it's worth noting that Brian Schubert has closed up just a little bit.
Oh.
Coming across the line just now, 1.695 gap between him and Trevor Acker. So slowly but surely making up some time. It is worth pointing out, too, that Brian Schubert had our fastest lap on the track on lap number 5, which was 1:59.652.
Right.
So he's definitely got some speed there to play with. It's just, is he going to be able to do enough in the time remaining? 10 laps in, 21 minutes in as well, and a 25-minute race. Maybe 2 or 3 more laps to see here at most before this race comes to an end.
So the other thing is, he may have just been waiting. Trying to get those tires to cool off, get the car to cool off a little bit. And now he realizes that it's go time, and if he wants to win this race, now is the time to do it. It does look low. The gap has widened just a tiny bit since the last time by, but still a lap and a half at least to go, maybe 2.5 laps. We'll wait to see what happens when they cross line. I haven't heard them call last lap, next lap yet, so probably 2 laps at the line next time by. This time by.
Yeah, I think they're probably aiming for 13 overall, if I had to guess.
Okay, there you go.
Lucky number.
Only if you're at the front. And then if you're not, you want 14.
Some smoke, or some dust, I should say, up there. I was a little too excited for a second. Some dust kicked up there in the end of that Grapevine, which, again, has just been relentlessly dusty. The cotton corners over there this entire weekend. Otherwise unsurprising. Here comes Trevor Acker across the line. Brian Schubert following. Let's get an update on that gap. It's about the same that it was on lap number 10, so maintaining their positioning.
All right, so I've not heard any official word, but I've got to think. And actually, I guess we are hearing the official word. Next time by will be the white flag lap. It'll be the final lap of our racing action out here at Buttonwillow for the weekend. So we'll see if Brian can catch up and make this last lap a little exciting for us. And if not, we'll make it sound exciting anyway.
It is worth pointing out right there on our top three is 61916 in terms of their numbers, which Race Control just described as a palindromic finish, which I thought was worth sharing because it is true. It is the exact same order back to front. So there you go. We're having a good time here. An Uzi rat in a sanitary zoo up here in the commentary booth. Now back over on the back stretch, Brian Schubert, he's trying. He's gonna be a hell of an opportunity for him to get this back together, and I just don't think it's gonna happen.
No, it does not look like that's a gap, unless there's a problem with Trevor Acker on these last few corners, which can happen. You know, you get confident or overconfident. A little closer now, it looks like. Will it be close enough to make it? I don't know. But when they come back into our view, we're going to see them for the last time. Oh, no, coming to the white flag. I was getting ahead of myself.
Indeed. White flag out, ready to go. We lost them down there and towards the off-ramp, but we'll be seeing them in just a second coming through the tree. I mean, it's closed. It's closed up, let's say that, for Brian, but it's I think almost insurmountable here. We'll get an official time on the gap. Ooh, it's about a second.
Yeah,
That's just enough that you might want to chance it there if you're sitting on Brian Schubert. Go all out, give that engine one really good last turn around the track here at Buttonwillow, and just see if maybe you can catch up to Trevor Acker, especially as you come up towards that grapevine, which has been such a difficulty for all of our drivers down into the cotton corners. That could be the spot. So we'll be very, very careful in how we watch this develop when they come up to the riverbank turn.
Yes, and 1 second is just a slight mistake by the first place car.
Not a
It
lot.
does not take much for 1 second to become I'm in second place. So and that's what we're looking at here. And late in the race, hot temperatures, not always the mind's not always where it needs to be, and little mental mistakes can turn into something. And so that's what Brian's kind of hoping for if he doesn't have the car to catch them. We're looking for them to come through Riverside, and they are right now. I would say about a 6-car length, 3-car length lead, 4-car length lead. Let's call it a 4-car length lead.
Let's call it a 4-car. That's fine. And yeah, certainly you can see they're both putting on the speed coming down here on the back stretch. It's going to be, I think, up in these turns that things are really decided. I just don't know if Brian Schubert has the road to run this. I can tell that they're putting on the speed as hard as they can to catch up right here, and that gap is getting smaller, probably about 2 cars there coming through the cotton corners. A little bit of dust actually kicked up by Brian. Now about 2 car lengths between them, maybe 3. Coming down the I-5 right there, you could really see the speed was put on in the last second by Trevor Acker.
And they're out of our view, but they're going to come back into our view in just a second. And when they do, the call to the checkered flag, here's Tristan Parker.
Waiting for him now. Here comes Trevor Acker up the outside. Oh, Brian Schubert will make a push for it here. Just coming up out of Sunrise. No, it's not enough time. Trevor Acker sailing across the line right there. Brian Schubert right behind him. Just did not have enough road to run. A 0.6 gap there, but it is Trevor Acker who will take the win in the end. Brian Schubert coming in second.
We didn't even have to make up a good finish. We didn't have to exaggerate that one.
It was a good one.
What a great finish. All right. I think it's safe to probably do a full field rundown right here as we get ready to wrap up our last race of the day. Let's go and do that right now.
Well, here's your full field rundown for the day. In first place overall, number 61, Trevor Acker. In second place, number 9, Brian Schubert. In third place, number 16, Michael Moshe. In fourth place, number 37, Don Paula.
That is our full field race rundown brought to you by the Inside the SCCA podcast, available on all of the popular podcast platforms. Coming